All right, there I am. Okay. So now, and by the way, if you're going, what the hell is this guy doing here? The reality here is what this guy is doing is he hasn't done this before in this environment. So I can see what's going on. So really, I'm looking at myself, and the only reason I'm looking at myself is that I want to see what comments are coming in so I can respond. Okay. So this video is live now today at 12:50. Comment. All right, I got to put something in here. Um, let's see here. So this is me talking to me. How's that? How's that for a great comment? All right, let's see what pops up over here. Like get this here. All right, I don't. All right, so let's cut through it, and we've started the recording. And so here's what I want to do here. I want to set the context for this. Now everything, and we've got it in the link. I'm also going to put it over here. Boom, boom. Let me see here. Don't mind me if I seem like I'm talking to myself. It feels like that at the moment, right? Okay, I put in the show notes, which I wanted to provide to all of you. All right, so here we are. So there's the show notes. Okay, so let's start talking. Here's what's going on here is that we've decided that this is a show that we did a couple of seasons back. It's different than the one that we did in that we're going to cover different material and different ways of doing it. Some is the same, some's different. But the idea behind this is that help you, if you're considering starting a consulting company, how do we do that? How do you do that? Now, I'm not going to do anything around how to consult. That's really beyond where this show is. If you want to know that, we're seriously considering about creating, I don't want to call it a franchise, but creating a model that you could use that if you feel comfortable that you're an expert in a particular area, we'll help you with all the other pieces. But the focus here is going to be just predominantly on what does it take to run a consulting firm? All right. And so that's going to be kind of my energy, my emphasis where I'm going with this. Now, this is also going to be broadcast live on IBGR. So this is going to be both a simulcast here as well as something that we're doing on the network. And so you get the advantage of looking at me live. Well, I don't know if that's an advantage, but anyway, or you get the opportunity to at least listen to what I'm doing. Now, in the background, we're broadcasting from our conference room and not from the studio. And the challenge we're having with the studio right now is that because it's set up as a audio and recording studio, the thing is so dark. Now, we just can't really get a good image in there. So we decided we'll just use the conference room, and behind me are some notes from our business plan. So I thought, well, that might be an appropriate place. And one of the later shows, what we'll do is we'll kind of do a pan around. We'll get the camera and do a pan around. But right now, let's just focus on getting all the technology to work. All right. So how do you listen to this? If you're here ahead of time, pretty simple. IBGR.network will take you to our website, and then you'll go to notes, which you'll find on the navigation bar. Then when you open that up, we should be someplace at the top of the queue. And because I don't have the name of the show memorized, I don't memorize any of that stuff. This is CIB.02. Now, CIB is creating an improvement business. Now, I kept consulting on there only because sometimes if you're an improvement business, what are we doing? Home improvements? So I added consulting. But really, if you think about it, I don't want to limit it to consulting or to coaching or to training, any of those types of professional services. What I want to do here is I want to speak to all of you who have something to offer to businesses. And here I'm going to be talking business owners, but certainly you could take this to larger corporations where you believe you can make a difference in the performance of the company. So that's why it says improvement. Now today, which is last week, was our opening show, and it was just an overview of all the different pieces that make this up, the 13 weeks that make up the season. Today, we're going into the first one. So I'm going to do an overview of the roles that are played within organizations like this, within a consulting firm, because you have some choices about what type of consulting firm you're going to have. I have some biases around what I think you can pull off, and we'll go there over the season. And then I want to really talk about the Hippocratic Oath. You know, like doctors, there's a Hippocratic Oath around doctors, which starts off with doctor, do no harm. In other words, at a minimum, the treatment that the doctor provides you should not leave you worse off than you were before they started treating you. And if we go back to when Hippocrates came out with this around, I don't know, between 200 and 300 BC, you can imagine what healthcare was like in those days. But it's always applied. I mean, if you go back 150 years, my God, the healthcare you would have gotten is pretty challenging. And so the first rule here was, doctor, if you're not sure this is going to help, don't do it. Well, in the consulting business, it's kind of the same gig. All right, let me look at the clock here. All right, we've got about 8 more minutes. So I want to keep my powder somewhat dry and not talk about all the topic areas that we're going to cover. So if anybody's in watching this, let me go back to my screen to see if I got any comments in here, because it appears that I'm not going to get any comments from, it says page not found. What is this? Boom, 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 boom. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, I don't know what's going on. All right, so what else is happening here? And so this may be me. So you want to start a consulting business? Okay, well, I'm putting all my comments in 2 areas. We'll see where they fall out. This is me talking to me. So this is the first time I've done this. I'm not really sure yet of exactly where we should take this. All right, so let me say, now it's talking to me. All right, good enough. Yeah, so you didn't take much. Now I found myself. All right, so we are scheduled to be on in about 5 minutes. And of course, it won't be exactly 5 because we've got about 2 minutes of commercials to start. So if anybody's listening at this right now and you got any questions, please put them up here in Facebook. And I'm not looking at YouTube right now, so I've predominantly focused on Facebook. And if well, no, I can't tell you where to find it in Facebook, because if you're on the radio, I'm not on the radio yet. So if you're not looking at it, then you don't know I'm here anyway. All right. So crazy stuff. So anyway, let me see here. I think I've got everything ready to go. And got my show notes ready. We've got a couple minutes before we go on. And so anyway, if you happen to bop on by and drop me a note, I am looking forward to talking with you. Now, if you don't stop by, then here's what you need to do. Number one is this is going to be available to everybody. All right, so this is going to be here. Oh, what a frozen shot of me. Wow, that's not very good. So anyway, oh yeah, my head turned. Oh, okay, I see. What I'm looking at is the time lag between StreamYard, where I'm broadcasting from, and what's appearing on the screen. So, no big deal. I'm not going to pay attention to myself at all. I'm only going to be paying attention to the comment section. But again, if you got anything that you want to hear around consulting, post it here. And when I start, I'll go into my pedigree, because what I don't want to do is I don't want to redo this. And we have a lot to cover. So if you're not looking at those show notes, you need to be, because if you're going to take notes, I don't believe you can take notes fast enough to cover what we're going to do here. I've taken basically 2 shows, what should be 2 shows, and turned it into 1. And the reason I did that is I want to get through this, because the things that we should be discussing are going to take a lot of time, and we only have 12 weeks left in the season. Now, if you want to have an off conversation with me and you want to talk about growing your consulting company, just put it here on Facebook. In fact, the way I want to handle that, you go and join our private group. Join the private group that we got in Facebook. And if you do that, then I'll help you start a consulting company. I'll give you what I know after 41 and a half years, I guess, right now. Yeah, 41 and a half years. I've been in this business. I've started a number of companies. By the way, all the companies I've started either were in the consulting industry or had a facet to them that was in consulting, but they were all professional services companies. And so, yeah, I have done turnarounds in manufacturing. I've worked with manufacturing. I've done radio stations. I've done customer service companies, as well as consulting. The place that I know from running day-to-day operations is a consulting firm. And the IBGR, in many ways, is a consulting firm. And believe it or not, and the reason I say it's a consulting firm, because what are we doing? If you listen to this 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, we talk about starting, growing, or exiting a business. That's all insights that we're providing to you because there are no university professors. There's nobody on this station or on this network who is coming at this academically. Now, occasionally we may meander into that particular area, and I'm probably as guilty of that as anybody. But the bottom line is, I'm trying to tell you what I learned, and this worked, that didn't work. And the idea behind myself or anybody else that's on the network is it's not self-aggrandizement. It's not to make us look good. I want to tell you the good stories and the bad stories so you can weed through that and go, I like that one, I'll use it. I don't like that one, I'm not going to use it. And so the more that we can speed up your learning process as you're starting a company, especially if you're, this is your first or second startup and, let's say you're under 40, take advantage of the fact that we have close to a millennium, that's 1,000 years, close to a millennium of experience right now on the network. If you looked at the collective experience of running businesses that are on the network, this is what you would find. And so that, I think that makes us unique. And it's only growing. It's only getting bigger and better. Okay, we're down to the countdown. We're into 1 minute. And so what's going to happen here? I'm going to sign on. What you're going to be hearing from this point forward is the radio station. All right. So we should be listening to some wonderful advertisements, things of that nature. You might even hear me do a commercial or two. But, basically, I'm so sick of listening to myself that I'm ready to go someplace else. Okay, let's see here. I think I got everything I need. I can't think of anything else that is required. Let me see. What else do I need to do here? No. Okay, that's fine. Oh, righty. So I think we're all ready to go. Let's look at the time. All right. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to turn on the sound, and so that everybody can hear what's going on. And you can actually watch me if I'm playing studio engineer. What am I actually doing as a studio engineer and monitoring our shows? All right. So let's pull up the station. Let's go here. Here we are. And that's a momentary pause we put in there to keep shows from bleeding into each other. Well, maybe.
Are you looking to establish your business
right.
regionally and globally? Are you looking to establish yourself and your business as experts? Are you looking to create professional marketing materials such as podcasts, collateral for websites, brochures, and media kits?
Oh, yeah.
Then join us. We are Profit Radio. We are entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. Every host is a business owner sharing their expertise with other owners. There is no other option at this price point that will give you the reach and professional image as IBGR. Join us by going to ibgr.network and look for the Join Us on the homepage. It is the best decision that you will make this year about your future.
Who is that masked man? All right, what's next? Come on.
If you are a professional looking at the European startup scene, Germany is a place you cannot miss. Fortunately for you, there is startuprad.io, the authority on German startups. This English-only podcast brings you fresh interviews each week. Most likely, you have never heard or read anything on these startups before in English, but you will in the future. Be ahead of the curve and subscribe to startuprad.io podcast, or check for the startuprad.io internet radio station. Check your Alexa for the startuprad.io skill as well.
Yeah, if you get an opportunity, Startup Radio or startuprad.io, great place to be.
You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network, better known as Profit Radio, entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs. All of our hosts are entrepreneurs and business owners broadcasting 24/7 around the world to other entrepreneurs and business owners. We're also known as the #1 global business talk and news station on the internet. Our call sign, our name, and our URL are all the same thing, and they are our broadcast frequency, ibgr.network. Never miss a show if you're looking to start, grow, or exit a business. We are the IBGR Network.
All right, let's see if we get the right order here. First thing we got to do is we got to turn that off. There we are. Look at that. Look how easy that is. Now what we need to do is we need to, and what I did is I just secured you from listening to the show, because if it comes in and I go on to open mic, what's going to happen? We're going to get a feedback loop, which is where it trips up most of our newest people. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. You are listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman, host for today's show, and I am so happy because in this series, what we've decided to do is we're going to simulcast. That's an old term, but I like it. We're going to be doing this on YouTube. We're going to be doing it on Facebook, as well as we're live on the International Business Growth Radio Network. Now, IBGR, what does it stand for? That is our call sign. All right. And our call sign, just like any other radio station, the difference between us and a terrestrial radio station, the one where you're in your car and you turn it on the radio, or you're at home in the office, you turn on the box, is there. It's a wavelength coming in through the air, kind of like a Wi-Fi. Here, you are on the internet. And the only difference between us and a terrestrial station is we're not asking, Mother, may we broadcast, and what can we say? We're using the internet as a broadcast tower. So we have a call sign like any other radio station. I stands for international. We're currently heard in 177 countries of the 195 countries that the UN says that we have. So we're well into 90%. Number 2 is the BG of IBGR is business growth. Every day we talk about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We talk about how to start, grow, or exit a business, who's listening, business owners, entrepreneurs, people in the gig economy, self-employed. In other words, anybody who is signing their own paychecks rather than letting somebody else do that, this is the place to be. And then the R of IBGR, what does that stand for? Radio. So IBGR is our call sign. It is also our name. IBGR.network is our name of our organization. And it is our URL, and it is our broadcast frequency. So what you need to do is you need to go to ibgr.network, okay? When you get to the network, when you get there, here's what I'm going to ask you to do. You're going to see a navigation bar below the, the opening graphic. You're going to see notes just a little bit left of center. Click notes, and then when you click notes, open up this show right here. And it should be at the top of the queue if you're listening to this live. If it's on replay or podcast, I'll tell you in a second how to do it. You're looking for CIB.02. I'll explain that in a minute. But if you don't find it on the first page, there's over 2,200 pages of show notes here. So, I mean, if you want to go through the whole thing, that would be wonderful. In fact, there along the right-hand side of the show notes, you can see the different categories and seasons and etc. Well, let's make this a shortcut, because you want to, if you're listening to a podcast, you want to look at the notes. So right next to the list there, you'll see new choice for business search. And right there in that search bar, you put in CIB.02, creating a consulting/improvement business. That will pop it up. Now, the CIB stands for creating an improvement business. I dropped consulting because I want to expand the coverage here, because really, if we were to call this what it is, it's a professional services, how to create a professional services business. But what the hell does that mean? And so we put consulting on there because what everybody knows what consulting is. And today we're going to be talking about roles and the oath. And so I'm going to cover in one show what I would typically do in two, because I want to set the groundwork. Now, my name is William Eastman. I'm the host for the show, and I'm also the station director here. So I wear several hats, and that's two that I wear. Now, let's get into this, because I typically do not talk about street cred. You either like what I'm doing or not. You either listen to it and think it sounds competent, or it doesn't. I let you decide that. But I think in this particular case, I felt some need. I don't know why. I felt some need to go, okay, let me give you a little of my pedigree, okay? Last week, what we did, and this was in CIB.01, we give you a summary of what we're going to do this season. So the way to look at it is we're writing a book on how to create a consulting firm. And that last week was chapter 1, which was basically the table of contents. The other shows are all chapters in the book. So this is really the first chapter, and by talking about roles and the oath of consulting. Now, academically, just to give you some background, this is my second degree. My career, I started as an engineer, and I worked in marine sciences, and I worked with atmospheric research and things of that nature while I was in the United States Coast Guard. And then I picked up when I got put on the beach, which is a term for I wasn't on a ship. When I was put on the beach and I was a sand peep, I got a bachelor's degree in organizational behavior from the University of San Francisco. And then I picked up a master's degree from California American, which is now part of San Diego State, in management and organizational development, a master's of science degree. And so I've been in this for the majority of my life. And so I started the Coast Guard. I was at the Coast Guard's Leadership and Management School, and we were doing in-resident training. The commands came to us and said, we want you to help the whole command, not one or two people, and we can't send the command to you because we got to run the damn thing. Can you come to us? Well, I looked at that and said, that's an OD development. That's organizational development. If I'm going to train everybody or all of the management in a particular area in a concept, in a set of tools, then I'm having an impact on the entire system. I have to look at this as a consulting gig. And what I did is I started a consulting operation inside the Coast Guard. After I left the Coast Guard, this is my 5th company, and I started a number of companies. One of the companies I started was a outsourced consulting firm that was attached to the Ken Blanchard companies. And I actually put a link in there. Now, we no longer exist. Long story. It's one of those Scotch or bourbon nights when we get into how you got to pick your partners very well, because if you don't, you're going to get hosed. But this is Mr. Peabody's Wayback Machine. If you click that, you get an idea of what we were doing in Blanchard Solutions Group. For everybody out there, here's what's relevant. What's relevant about this story is we went from $0 to $10 million in 3 years. Okay, let me say that again. We started a consulting firm with $0. Okay, and for all of you out there with this white supremacist hang up, that is not the okay sign. 0, 0. So I'll put a cross right there, because those of us in sciences, that really means 0. And in 3 years, we got it to 10 million. On top of that, is that we had margins in the 40s. Now, in a consulting operation, which is predominantly labor, if you're getting 25% margin, you're doing pretty damn well, because you're constrained by, if you're going to hire great talent, you got to pay them a lot of money. On the other hand, you can't charge clients only so much. So you've got these two boundaries. I can get schlock work and make a lot of money off of them, but we're not going to keep any accounts. I can hire the really good people and not make any money. And so the challenge you have with consulting firms when you're hiring subject matter experts, which we're going to talk about, is this dilemma. On the other hand, we figured out how to get our best year was in year 2, when we were at 6.5 million, and we got a 47% gross margin. We looked at all our work. Our last year, our 3rd year, when we were at $9.9 million, our gross margin has gone down to 43%. Okay, now I say that somewhat tongue-in-cheek in terms of gone down to 43%. I'm using that to say, look, I've done this before. Let's have a conversation about how it works. All right, so let me check here over at Facebook. See if I've got any questions. Anybody hits me up with something and they want to know something. Okay, good enough. Let's keep rolling. So if you're not there, let me pick you up again. If you're getting this right now, you need to go to our website, ibgr.network. That's ibgr.network. When you get there, you see the navigation bar, click Notes. When you open up Notes, if this is on the first page, which means you're probably live, or a replay that's recent, you'll find CIB.02, and that's creating a consulting improvement business, the roles and the oath. Now, if in fact you're listening to this several days later, you wouldn't know that, but if you don't see it on the first page, put CIB.02 and then put in creating a consulting/improvement business. I guarantee you this is going to pop right up. And again, my name is William Eastman, and I'm the host for the show. So now let me get down here. So what's the objective? Okay. Okay. One thing. Here is my hang up with the word consulting, because I call myself the young consultant. And my hang up is this. What is the common modern perception of those of us who use the title consultant? And I put it in italics. And that is, we're somebody from out of town in a business suit with a briefcase and a business card who borrows your watch to tell you the time and expects a big check for their positive impact. Now, that's a mouthful, but that's the way most people see consultants. They don't see that we're really providing any value. And quite frankly, I know enough people in this industry, why I call myself an unconsultant, that I wouldn't hire and take to a dogfight. And the reason for it is they're all there about themselves. What they're not here to do is to do anything for you. So I want to put that out there, because if you're going to run a consulting operation, you have to dispel this. Now, if you don't encounter it, that's wonderful, but keep it in the back of your mind, because if you're consulting with somebody who is, say, over 40, certainly over 50 in terms of business owner or in a moderate-sized business, this is their perception of consultants that you got to break through. Now, my objective for today's show is simple. How do I decide what role to play as a consultant, and what are the rules I need to understand and live by to the best of my ability? All right, so let's do it this way. Here's what you need to know. Now, I don't have too much on what you need to do, because the focus of most of our upcoming shows are doing. This show is going to be more of a knowledge show, which is a little bit different than what we typically do. All right, so now, 4 roles of consulting or consulting employee, and that is as a virtual or fractional executive, as a subject matter expert, as a coach, and as a trainer. Now, I've got a disclaimer at the bottom of this list, but I'll hit you with it right now, and then I'll go back to it. And that is, there isn't a damn bit of difference when you get down to it between consultant, coach, and trainer. Now, a lot of people would disagree. We have a lot of coaches that are on the station here who have heartburn when I say that, but here's the deal. You're delivering the same kernel of information. The issue is, how are you doing it? If I'm working one-on-one with the owner, am I consulting or am I coaching? I mean, that's a tough one to call. If I'm dealing with all the direct reports of the owner, am I doing consulting, coaching, or am I doing training? And so what you see is that I believe that coaching, consulting, and training are artificial constructs. You have a byte of information. If I can use computer code as an example, you have this byte of information. You need to get it to the owner or the owner's company so they understand it and can use it. And so it doesn't matter whether it's one-on-one in a group, whether it's virtual, it's in person. I have that kernel of information that I want to impart. And so understand where I'm coming from. Now, let's take each one of those and break those down. Virtual executive. Now, I've made a living at this position for a while. I call it Chief Growth Officer for hire. But it's nothing more than I'm working as a virtual executive. Now, what is a VE? Now, as I go down this list, here's what I want you to consider. If you're going to start a consulting firm, which one of these roles are appropriate for what you want to do? Because these are different companies with a different pricing structure, with a different, what I'll call a value ladder in terms of what is the values or the features that you're going to provide in your offer are all going to be different. So a VE is, I come in and I'm going to basically run part of your company. And to me, this is probably the closest or the most effective, because one of my big issues when we talk about around the oath is that if you don't have skin in the game, you got to be exceedingly careful about providing advice. If you provide advice, if you tell the customer what to do, and you don't have an ownership stake in the company, and your advice is bad and it puts them out of business, how much risk are you under? You're going to get fired. Oh, big deal. Because you know what? If you're a consultant, you get hired to get fired anyway. My second rule of second rule of the Hippocratic Oath for consultants. And so I have to be very careful about how I dispense advice. So virtual executive is, I probably have the most skin in the game because I'm running part of the operation. Now, the upside of this is, if you're really a hands-on type and you love being an operator, great place to be. But on the other hand, you better get paid reasonably well for this, because I don't know how many of these you can do. Can you be a virtual executive once a week, once a month, and then have 4 accounts, right? So first week of the month, you're VE, and then the other 3 weeks, you're working out of your place, and you're available on call, but you're working on something else. And the answer is, I don't think you can pull that off. I think that if you're going to be a VE, the best place you can get to is that you have an assignment every 2 weeks, that you have 2 accounts that you're working, and you are playing hopefully somewhat of the same role, and you've got some pretty good technology behind you, so that a lot of the things that you're going to do are going to get tracked. If that's true, then VE is not a bad place to be. So, for example, if you are a former business owner and want to be in the consulting business for business owners, you're in a good spot to be a VE, a virtual executive, whatever title you want to give yourself. Okay, so that's one thing to consider, and it is you're going to be responsible for delivering part of the business. I worked in this for a number of years because when I was doing turnarounds, I typically would come in and I would isolate the owner from their business. So I would come in as the executive officer. If I use military terms, I would come in as the number two. And then what I would do is say, nobody talks to the boss unless they go through me, not because I'm trying to keep information from them. I'm trying to keep them from getting in the minutia, because one of the problems with the company is that the owner is not thinking like an executive, and I'm giving them the space to do that. All right, that's number one. Number two, excuse me, and this one is much more of the traditional role in consulting. I have SME here on the notes. By the way, if you're just joining us, go to our website to get the show notes, and that's ibgr.network, ibgr.network. When you get there, you'll see notes, click it, and what you want to do is you want to open up CIB.02, Creating Consulting Improvement Business. If you don't see it on the page, put that in the search bar. All right. So a traditional consultant is a subject matter expert. In other words, you're hired to come in and do something. And this is a traditional consulting firm. When I was running Blanchard Solutions Group, there were 4 partners running the business. One was marketing and sales. The other 3 were projects. And so the way that we worked, we had a portfolio of accounts. And then I had in those accounts, I had a project manager who was a senior consultant, and I had consultants, coaches, and trainers who are working in those accounts. And when we get into how to structure this, I'll make this make sense. But pretty much you're going to have to run kind of a matrix organization in terms of every consultant in your firm has a homeroom and they have a specialty. And so when you put together a project, you assemble based upon the expertise required, who you're going to put in there. And so you never run teams that have got exactly the same people in them, nor do you run people through an account where they're there all the time. And of course, in the sales process, you're going to have to work with the client to make sure that the client is aware that they're going to get a team, because sometimes what they do is they really like somebody at the beginning, and that becomes the company to them. And then you try to move them out, and they're like, well, what are you doing? So you want to create the mindset right up front that you're going to get our best talent, and we're going to rotate the best talent through here as appropriate. All right, well, I'll put that aside. That's for a conversation about how to run this thing. But an SME, okay, is somebody who is a subject matter expert at something. And so typically what you want to do here with this is that has the client, let me say it again, has the client correctly identified their own needs. Now, the problem here, and this is a topic that we are going to spend a great deal of time on, is you cannot rely upon the client to do a self-diagnosis. And the reason for it is simple. I'll break it down as simple as possible. If they're wrong and you didn't check it out, who's at fault when you deliver something that doesn't help? Now, the answer to that is both of you are at fault. They're at fault because they gave you bad advice, but what they hire you for? In other words, if they were good at taking their own advice, you probably wouldn't get a phone call. And so you don't know whether or not they don't have good diagnostic abilities, or they don't have good execution abilities, or they're not good at either. And so what I need to do is I need to make sure that I'm involved in that identification of what their needs are, so I can take a look at skill sets, right? Have they considered the consequences of expert data collection and recommendation on the organizational change? All right, so I'm going to be looking at how receptive are they for us to collect information, because if I'm going to work in the role of subject matter experts, I'm going to have to do some preliminary analysis. Now, I can do a survey and I can turn it into numbers, kind of a quantitative analysis, or I can do more of just interview people and do a thematic analysis on the interview data, which is nothing more than looking for patterns in their answers to say, okay, I asked this question about what's the 3 things that are wrong with the company. I talked to 10 people, and what I wound up with is when I consolidated everything, I probably had 5 top issues. That's what you would be doing there. Okay. And then number 3 is that is there any reality about the company that I can actually look at and study? So those are some things around the subject matter expert. But this is the traditional model of you sell brains and you manage calendars. That's what I was doing when I was at Blanchard Solutions and at the other, when I was at Trainingscape and some of the other companies. Is what we did is I tried to match the right person at that moment in time to the account, then manage the talent's schedule. Okay, so to make sure I get full utilization of them. And when we talk about that, here's the rule of thumb. Every consultant that works for you, and starting with you, has to have an applied rate at 75%. In other words, they are billing 75% of a month. So that basically 3 weeks of the year, they're billing. So what we did is we tried to work 2 weeks on site, 1 week working on client issues, and then 1 week down. Otherwise, you fry. And I fried myself several times. So I established what I thought were the right metrics. I also found that you could go hard for about 5 weeks. And then you definitely, if you didn't have any break time in there, you could run about 5 weeks and then you're toast in a different city every day, et cetera, et cetera. I also found that you couldn't manage more than 3 accounts as the prime person. Again, stuff we'll talk about later. But, I've been doing this for a long time, and there's a lot of things I learned the hard way when I said I can't do this anymore. All right, let's go down to the next one, and that is coach. And so on coach, 2 things to consider here. Number one is, are you just a process coach where you're very good at helping people identify what their goals and objectives are, and then you know how to hold them accountable to their goals and objectives? But you don't need to have any technical expertise on the particular topic around the industry that we're dealing with. And so this is a tough one. This is why a lot of coaching businesses are tough to get off the ground. I know a lot of coaches who are excellent at what they do as coaches, but then not necessarily are they having successful businesses, because what they don't realize is that if all you provide is holding people accountable for what they're doing, what happens when they're wrong? What happens when they say to you, well, how would you do this? You can't fall back and say, no, I don't do that. I'm not that type of coach. Because basically what you're saying when you say that is that I don't know anything. So a coach is where you assist and guide the business owner in running the business. Okay. And you typically, the things that you are working on, you're clarifying the vision. How does it fit into their personal goals? What processes are being used to take the business from where it is to where the owner wants it to be? And to me, it's really the opposite of the SME role. In the SME role is concerned about the consulting process of how they work with the client. But what's paramount with a subject matter expert is they're good. And I've had a lot of guys, women working for me who did not have a very good bedside manner. If you go back to the old days of doctors, in other words, technically the doctor was awesome, but they sucked, dealing with you day to day. I had a lot of consultants that were borderline Asperger people when it came to dealing with clients. But clients recognized their genius, and actually after a while, of course, I had to prompt them, but after a while, we're kind of enjoying going, God, how weird was he this month? And the client would come, man, you wouldn't believe what he did. So we kind of turned it into a joke. But in this particular case, as a coach, if you're not personable, if you cannot hold people accountable in a way where they don't want to kill you, then you're going to be really hard pressed to make this work. And then the last one is trainer. And to me, a trainer is just somebody who says, look, the issue here, before we can get to application, before we can get to how to do it, before we can get to the tools, there are things you got to know. And so trainer is a place where my focus is not in tools and applications. My focus is in gaps of knowledge. And the skills of a trainer are skills that, in fact, work for coaching and skills that work for consulting. The way that we worked our businesses, the last 2 consulting firms, is that we turned trainers into consultants. That was our methodology, because with trainers, they had to develop the platform skills to be able to convey a thought to people that people could grasp. They had to have some sort of presence on what we would call on the podium. They had to have presence in the classroom in order to get things done. And people, it's kind of a mixture of entertainment and information. So you've got, if you're all dry and it's all information and there's no entertainment, it doesn't work. Well, it's the same thing with everything else in life. Okay. So, but I started with trainers and then we would turn them into coaches or consultants, depending upon what role was comfortable with them, what they wanted to do. Now, thing I'm going to leave you with here is that I think we're approaching our break. Yeah, we got about 2 minutes left. So understand is that, as I said, and this is the disclaimer, and I'm going to take you to the bottom of the page, and that is the terms of consulting, coach, or trainer, to my mind, are really artificial. They really are. And it's more of you're going to deliver a kernel of information. How you do that is going to be dependent upon the circumstance here and whether I'm dealing one-on-one with a small group or with 50 butts in chairs. Okay. Now, let me scroll down here in the remaining time. If you go down to the bottom of the page, what do you need to do? Now, you're already here. You're already in Facebook if you're listening to us on Facebook. If you're not, our Facebook group is IBGR Network. And that's where we're broadcasting, by the way, right now in that Facebook group. So if you want to take a look at this later on, it's good. The video is going to be there for you to take a look at, or you want to join me live. I haven't looked at the comments lately because I'm kind of rolling through here, but I will on the break because we're about to go to a break. And this show is divided into 2 sections. Yeah, I got a minute something left, so let me move this over here so I can see it. I am running out of screen landscape. We also have a LinkedIn group, and it's the same thing, IBGR Network. Go to our business page and join the group. And if you do, what happens is that the stuff that I allude to here that I can give you, I'll give you. And if you're not in either one of those groups, I'm just not going to hand it out, because this is, when you invest 40 some odd years of your life in developing things, you're not just going to hand it out to anybody that comes along. I'm not going to do that. So if I know you and I know it's the right thing, I'll help you out. And the last thing got on the list is mobile app. Now, by the way, these are all links you can click, but the mobile app, if you want to go there directly, ibgr.app, A-P-P. And what we have here is we call it Solutions on Demand. That is the app. And what it gives you in the palm of your hand, you have Solutions on Demand. Everything that we do is there. All right. So with that, let me take you out to break. So you listen to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm host for this show. This is show CIB.02, which is creating a consulting/improvement business, the roles and the oath. Go nowhere. Don't touch that dial. I'll smack your hand if you do. We're going to be back in about 2 minutes. All right. So all you out there who went through the first piece, and I'm going to
Go nowhere. Don't touch that dial.
Oh, look at that guy.
We're going to be back in about 2 minutes.
All right, I'm going to turn this off and turn it back on. So what you got is the first half of this, and what I laid out were the roles, the general roles that are played in a consulting firm. Now, you could build a firm that does all of those, or you could build a firm that is only one. Now, if it's just you, my recommendation is to start with one. If you are a subject matter expert in something and you haven't run a business, I would probably start there. If, on the other hand, you've been a business owner and you've done this a few times, then the virtual executive is probably a place that you can go. But again, this is a call you got to make. But if you build a consulting firm, and I'll give you our numbers. We built a consulting firm making $10 million a year with 12 people. All right, so we had 4 partners. All right, so that takes us to 8. We had 2 people in the secretarial role. All right, so that takes us, or assistant role, so that takes us to 6. So with a bench of 6, we made $10 million, and the way we managed it. Half of the 6 were project managers. Each could handle 2 projects at once, and then we just kept mixing talent. And then occasionally we would pull an outsider in because they were a subject matter expert at a thing that we were not, and we would bring them in for that piece right then and there. And that's the way we did it. All right, so we're getting close to going back on the air. I'm going to put the commercial back on so I can gauge where we're at. When we come back, we're going to be talking about the Hippocratic Oath.
newspaper during the workday. It's updated every 12 hours. While you're there, check out our podcast.
Oh, yeah.
We record our reports,
Our new news service,
reports,
of course.
which is 11 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 11 a.m. And so you can understand why we selected 5 or 6 or 7 stories out of the 100
That's me
that are part
on the news desk.
Let IBGR.news be your source of the latest information to start, grow, and exit a business.
All right, here we go, everybody. It's watching on Facebook. 3, 2, 1. And we're back. You're listening to IBGR, the International Business Growth Radio Network. My name is William Eastman. I'm the host for today's show. This is show or podcast CIB.02. And what does that mean? That means we're creating a business, a improvement business or a consulting business. I'm using consulting because improvement, I didn't want to go. This is not home improvement. This is improving businesses. So CIB, that stands for Creating Improvement Business. 02 is the second show in the series. We've got 13 shows designed for you this season in our wonderful season 6 here at IBGR. And the theme this year for our shows this season is build your business today. And so what I'm doing is I'm talking about a future offer that we're going to be doing here at the network. And that is we're going to be offering, I'll say franchise for right now because I don't have a better word for it, but we're going to be showing you how to start a consulting firm. Now, the reason for this is pretty simple. We're being very selfish here. And you may say, well, of course, it's about money. Well, yeah, kind of, but it's really not. Here's what we're being selfish about. We are around the world. We're in 177 countries. Okay, 177 countries. If you listen to the UN, there are 195 countries. So we're in over 90% of the countries around the world. How do we help businesses deal with what they got to deal with? Well, we're running a consulting firm here on the air. What we do every day, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week is consult. I mean, we're telling you what we know. Everybody that's doing a show, everybody is a host, everybody who's an on-air talent, depending upon how I feel about defining them on any particular day, are all subject matter experts on the concept of running a business. If they're not on the air. That's just how we work things here. I don't want this to be an educational program. You can go to college and get that. And I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying that that's not part of the world that we want to be in, because I want to compete with those people. And then if you've been to college recently and you've been around people who are talking about business, especially entrepreneurial type businesses, small businesses, you find out that the people who are leading the class or teaching the class haven't run a business. And I just don't know how you can talk about running a business when you haven't run a business, because it defies the theories. The theories work, but you got to understand the concept. You got the context of how they work. And so what we're doing here is we want people who are starting small business consulting firms, and you can use our platform in our intellectual property. Now, in just my case, I'm not talking about everybody, in just my case, 4 decades, over 40 years of information that I can give you access to. If you take everybody on the station, we probably have, I would easily say, 7 centuries of information. We're close to a millennium, but that would, we don't have enough people. They would all have to have my amount of time doing this, and they don't. So I figure we have anywhere from 5 to 7 centuries of experience running companies. That's the intellectual property that you could access. So what we're doing is I'm telling you the black box. I'm not saying you got to buy something, because right now we haven't come up with how are we going to sell it? What are we going to charge? All that's immaterial. Right now, what I want to do is I want to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, something that I've done for a good many years, and I want to help you do it. Where this goes later on, I'll tell you. By the end of the season, I'll have a better sense of it. So now, IBGR.network is our webpage. Get there, get to the show notes. You'll see notes in the navigation bar. Click it when you get there, and it's on the first page. You see CIB.02. You're there, open it. If you get there and it's not there, there's over 2,200 pages of notes in here, and that's part of the intellectual property you'd be able to access. Go to New Choice for Business Search, put it CIB.02, and then put creating a consulting or improvement business in there, and up this will pop. Now, let's scroll down. This is the second half of the show. We had a podcast, and what I did in the podcast is I gave you a little bit of my background, which I'm not going to do again. I'm going to talk about what the objective is, and that's how do I decide what role to play as a consultant. Okay, we covered that. So you got to get to the first podcast. Number 2 is, what are the rules to live by? That's what we're going to be doing here. All right. So if you scroll down the page and you'll see virtual executive, SME, coach, trainer, those are roles to be played. And if I have time at the end of this, which I won't, but if I do, I'll come back and talk about them a little bit more. But the easiest thing you could do is between reading it and listening to the podcast, you got it done. Now, here is something that I developed in my last firm, and I've stuck with this. This is how I've run my businesses. I want to share this with you. The unconsultant's Hippocratic Oath. Now, I call it the unconsultants because I am sick and tired of what the perception with people who hire consultants. When they hear you're a consultant, what do they think? We don't have, our profession does not have the best of reputations. Now, we're not as bad as used car salesmen or politicians or somebody in media, like somebody who's a talking head on television. All right, we're not in that bad of shape, but we're not that well respected. We're not respected enough for what we're capable of doing for companies. You get a good consultant, man, they can turn it around for you. So I came up with a variation of what Hippocrates did when he came up with the Hippocratic Oath. And this is talking about Greek medicine, someplace around the 3rd century BC. All right. So it's a few years ago. And of course, you can imagine where medicine was in those days. But basically, item number 1 on my list is right from Hippocrates. And that is, do no harm. All right. Go back to doctors. If you are not sure that this treatment is not going to work, it's one thing if it isn't going to work, but the client is not going to get it worse. It's another thing is that if there's a risk that the client's going to get worse, then, or the patient, then you got to stop and go, whoa, I've got to think this through. Number 1. Number 2 is I've got to explain to the patient what's about to happen. Now let's put it in consulting terms. I'm talking to a business owner. I could put them out of business. With bad advice, I can put a business owner out of business. And then how does that impact me? Well, I lose my job, and we get to number 2. We'll address that. But also, it ruins my reputation. All right, but that's not the same as having a $6, $7, $8 million business go under that somebody's invested their life into. So do no harm. During the project planning phase, it is critical to make the major risks known to the client and its leading indicators. So let's stop with that sentence. So I have sold this gig. All right. You have said, okay, I want you to come in. And as we talked about in the first segment, I've done a lot of virtual executive stuff. You want me to come in and take this role over. All right. Now, so in the planning phase, at the very beginning, we need to get an alignment between what you think I'm going to do and what I'm going to do. Because I don't care how well I've explained it in the sales process. People hear what they want to hear. And of course, as the consultant, I'm guilty too, because I've heard what I wanted to hear. So we're going to sit down and we're going to be talking about exactly what's going to happen. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, not just here, but every time it occurs, I'm going to give the client what I believe are the major risks that they face. And I'm going to give them what the leading indicators are. And what all right, Bill, slow down. What the leading indicator is how do we tell that this is about to happen rather than waiting for it to happen? Now, what I want to do here is as we talk about the options available to the client, what I don't want to do is say, take option B. Behind door number 2, as we remember Monty Hall, a great Jimmy Buffett song, I'll take door number 3. That's not what we're doing here. I'm saying, okay, there's a couple, I'm saying, I'm talking to my client. I go, David, you got 3 choices here. Okay, I see 3 choices. Here's the 3. Choice number 1. Here's the upside. All right. Here's if it works, here's what you're going to get. Here's the downside. If it works, it's not going to be perfect. So here are the things you got to contend with. And if it doesn't work, here's the risk you put the business at. All right, let's go to number 2. And I'm going to look at each one of those and lay it out so that the client can make the decision. But I have to understand that it's not my job to tell them what to do, because then I own it. And if it fails, it's my fault. I want to educate the client on what's going on so that that business owner knows all of their options, ramifications, the odds of it working, not working, so they can make an informed decision. Now, believe it or not, if I tell them what to do and it doesn't work, even though it could cost them their business, there's a tendency for people to sit on their hands. On the other hand, if this is a collaborative decision by you and me, and it's not going well, you're going to knuckle down as the owner, and you're going to work harder than you would have under different conditions. I know that sounds bizarre, but after 4 decades, it's true. Number 2 is we are hired to be fired. Keep that in mind at all times. We call it going, and another name for it is going native. In other words, you get so enthralled with the company. Like I was working with, and I'm going back a few years, back when they were in a huge growth spurt, I worked at American Online as a consultant. I loved that place. What a great culture. It was a great company. Steve Case was a visionary, driving a great company. Bob Pittman was there as the head of operations, a really experienced guy, knew what he was doing. Mark Stavish, who ran HR, who hired us. I mean, it was the perfect place to be. I loved that environment. But guess what? They don't hire me to love the environment. They don't hire me to love the company. They hired me to tell the truth. My job is to be a truth teller. Now, I can do that nicely, or I can be absolutely a butthead about it. Okay, that's kind of up to me. But the bottom line here is that here's where I'm at. Okay, let me see here. Yeah, I just had to check to see if anybody was in Facebook and any comments, and nope, nothing I need to deal with right now. Okay, so your job is to tell the client the truth. Varnish or unvarnished, it's up to you, but you're hired to tell them the truth, and you cannot fear for losing your job because what they've hired you to do is that. And I've had a couple of pretty, what's the word I'm looking for? Contentious conversations with people in executive positions and business owners because they didn't like what I said. And I look at them and say, look, this is what you hired me to do. If you want to be told what you want to hear, you got people around you. That's what you hired them for. Now, of course, I also took issue with that, but I'm tweaking them a little bit. But the bottom line is it's hard to get the truth from inside your own company. Why? Because they're taking a risk that they're going to lose their job, or they like you so much that the one thing they don't want to do is tell you things that they know are going to hurt you. So if you walk in the door going, I'm going to be out of here in 6 months, but it could be 2 months, it could be 1 week. If you can't tell the truth, you should have another account. Number 3, you can't care more than the client. Of all the rules I got, this is probably the one that is absolutely, absolutely the most critical to maintain your sanity. Because you have clients who hire you to come in and do something, they kind of turn it over to you, and then they act as if they could give a damn. And that actually could be true. So what I've got to do is I've got to say to myself, because I get in these accounts, and the type of person I am, my work habits over the years have been going back to my days in the military when I was a non-rate, when I was a seaman. I'm the guy that if you said, you see that hill over there, Eastman? You need to be on top of the hill tomorrow. I need our flag planted on the hill. I don't care what you got to do. I don't care what it takes. I want you to do that. Okay. I'm the guy that you would come to and go, okay, how do we do that? And so a lot of times what happens is I throw myself into the account and I'm just like, I'm stressing on stuff. And at some point you realize I'm the only one sweating this thing. Now, obviously, my reputation's on the line. My job is on the line. My role in this organization is on the line. But guess what? If they ain't sweating this, why am I sweating this? And so I don't know where the happy medium is, but I can also tell you that if I'm constantly worrying about this more than they are, I need to back off. Now, I don't mean to say I need to quit because that may be totally inappropriate for this, but I need to match the client's level of concern. And if I don't think that they are concerned enough about what's going on, then I need to bring it to their attention and find out, because it could be that they think this is going better. It's going. They think it's less critical. This is absolutely appropriate for the situation. or they're not aware of what's going on because they're not in touch as much because they went, oh, well, you're doing the old Pontius Pilate routine. Yep, you got it. I'm out of here. It's on you. Number 4, treat client money like it's your own. Absolutely. Now, I'll give you a hint of what I think is the best way to handle that. But fundamentally, you're going to be on some sort of expense account. It depends upon where that money's coming from. But you're going to be on an expense account because when you put a fee in, if you put in a fee plus expenses, all right, you don't necessarily have to worry about how you spend that money. But they do, because they're going to be looking at that. And trust me that anybody who's in the accounting function is going to be looking at how you spend money. And you're going to be hearing about your client is going to be hearing about it. Now, at a bigger corporation, contracting is going to be kicking them in the butt going, what the hell is going on over there? And so they're getting grief from their own internal departments. In a small business, the owner's looking at it because every dollar it's going to use coming out of their pocket. And so you have to establish some standards. Now, one of the ways that you establish a standard is you tell everybody that works for you that here is the maximum percentage of the fee that you can incur daily. We used to use 20%. So in other words, if you were paying me $1,000 a day, $200 is all I could spend on everything. And so you can't look at it for a day, but let's look at it over a week. I flew in, I flew out, I stayed in the hotel. I had maybe taxi charges, rental charges, I had food. It had to be under 20%. In fact, the magic number, 17. When I scrutinized all this, and I did it 2 ways. Let me talk about the other way here in a second. I scrutinized all this, and if it was over 17%, I started paying very close attention to where you were staying, where you were eating, because I knew the client was. If it was over 20%, we were having, in mafia terms, we were having to sit down because you're jeopardizing the account. And so if you treat their money like it's your money, then you're not going to give them a cause. You're not going to give them an issue. Let's say that the relationship is a little bit troubled, and because we're going through a rocky period, because all these relationships are troubled, and they're going to go through a rocky period. And this is going to be the thing they go, you know what, you're out of here. And you're not going to be out of here because you're fighting with them. The relationship is somewhat contentious over legitimate issues. They're going to go, you know what, you're spending too much money. You cost me too much money. You're out of here. You're giving the client an excuse to bail on the project. Now, the way we did it is we paid people on margin. We didn't pay people on top line. We paid it on bottom line. And so when we looked at it, we would take out of their pay, so to speak, out of their compensation plan, their expenses when they exceeded a certain amount. The other way to do this is you do a fixed cost contract. And that's eventually where we went to, is that we estimated what all the travel per diem charges were going to be. And we put that in there and told them. And I said, here's the deal. And this works, by the way, this works excellent for you, because it may be months between the time you do the work and the time you get paid. What we did is we got advanced travel per diem every month. I said, here's what I want. Every month you send me X number of dollars. That is our estimated travel and per diem dollars. Okay. So the cost that I'm incurring until you pay me is all soft costs. So now my consultants would get a little unhappy if they didn't get paid, and I had a commitment to them to pay them in 30 days. So between all this, I was able to manage the flow of money. But treat the client money like it's your own. Be respectful of them. And the smaller the business, the more this is critical. And the last account I had, I basically 10% of my fee is my travel and per diem. And instead of flying to the location, I drove 10 hours to get there. Why? 1, I saved the plane travel. 2, I saved the car rental. Now, I just lost 10 hours each way, so I lost 2 days. And they knew that. When we sat down, I laid that out for them on the different options so that we could focus on this account, and I didn't have to negotiate as much on price. All right, number 5, model the process. You absolutely have to be the walking, talking poster child for this, all right? So, and this gets into something we say a lot at the station, and that is you've got to, you basically have to eat your own dog food. Our rule at different consulting companies is you couldn't offer it as advice if you didn't practice it. Let me say that again. You couldn't offer advice that you didn't practice. In other words, if we as a company are not doing something, you can't offer it to a client. And this was what they used to hold us accountable for, going, look, guys, you just said this. Well, we're not doing this very well. And that gave us, the managing partners, part of our organizational responsibilities, saying, hey, we got to fix this because we're gonna live by a motto. And I've worked in a lot of companies. The worst company I ever worked in was an HR company. They were in human resources, training and consulting, and they were a horrendous company to work in. And you just got to say to yourself, how the hell did that happen? And so, you know the old saying, the cobbler's kids have no shoes. Well, that's what's going on here. So what you want to make sure is whatever it is that you're going to ask the client to do, you model it. If you say this is our consulting process, do it. If this is the way you say that the business ought to be run, do it. And I don't care if you're in a consulting, trainer, or coach role, you must be the message. It just makes life a whole lot simpler if you are. Now, number 6, this is all about technology transfer. And this is critical because you want a callback? I'll tell you how you get a callback. You don't get a callback by making them dependent. You get a callback by making them independent. And what they're going to do is they're going to bring something to you. They're going to bring something to you. And so here's where we're going to go here, is that my job, number one job, as we begin to fix the problems, or I begin to do the things that I've been hired to do, I'm going to do a brain transplant. I'm going to make sure that everything that I know and my tools are made available to them, as much as we have committed to in the contract. And that's another way that you can make the contracts a little bit fatter for yourself, is you say, look, and when we leave, we're leaving all the tools behind, right? You're not going to have to come back to us and buy stuff from us for the next year. We're going to leave all the tools behind for you. And what you're going to do is you're going to enable your clients, not empower. I hate the word empower. Enable. I know the word enable has been misused by what the dependence community, like, well, you enable alcoholics. Well, that's an abuse of the word. I'm going to enable the client to use what we've taught them to use. We've trained them to use the tools that we've given them, and I'm going to enable them to do it for themselves. And so they no longer are dependent upon us. And I can tell you what, does that work dividends? Because number one is you got to feel good about leaving the account, because what you will have done is you will have done some great stuff. But number two is, look at you have a brand ambassador. You have somebody who's out there raving about you because of what you did. You raised their game up. You didn't come in and just fix something. You raised their game. And that is huge to a lot of people. And so they must know what you know and put that into the contract. And as much as you can, charge for it. And what you can't charge for, it's just goodwill that you give away. Now, I'm not saying that you give them products or services that have nothing to do with the project for free, right? That's a different issue. I'm simply saying is that I'm going to bring the load. You hired us to do X. I'm bringing the load, and I'm going to do my best job. I'm going to do the best job I can in the period of time that I have to transfer that to you. All right. And then the last one here I have on this is, when the relationship is over, it's not over. It's never over. Because I had an old buddy of mine, one of the managing partners, who handled marketing and sales, and he said, the joke with a lot of people was that Pete was always closing, and he said, no, I'm not. See, if you close a deal, you close a sale, then you got to open it again. He said, I'm always selling. I'm not always closing, because I don't close deals. We move on to the next deal. So the relationship is never over. And in the consulting business, this is critical, because this is where you get more work. Just like in the previous one, they must know what we know, is that those business owners are going to encounter other business owners who are going to have the problem. They're going to go, I know this guy. You ought to call him. As a matter of fact, I had that happen to me last night. I was doing some work in the landscape industry, and I had a guy call me last night that I had worked with a business owner. Now, we're probably not going to transact any business, because I'm not doing that anymore. But here's the deal. You get those phone calls and you're going, hey, what's going on here? Do you know so-and-so? Do you need this or that? And it is so much easier to sell to people that have been accounts or are accounts than it is to get new accounts. It's about a 20% ratio. In other words, if I have an account, selling to them is 20% of trying to go out and acquire a new one. And so the relationship is never over. And in modern times, with customer relationship management software and all the tools that are put at your disposal, there's absolutely no way that you can forget them. You just set it up. All right, so that's where we're at. Now, let me take you down. The next show is going to be selecting your practice area. This is going to be critical because you had one issue about what is your role. Well, what's you're going to be a practice area? And I'm going to share with you the 6 practice areas in consulting. And this is high quality stuff. This is well researched. Okay. In this particular case, that's what you want. And it's from a couple of friends of mine who I've known for a number of years. And now they send me this yearly report that I used to have to pay a ton of money. I was going to say something else. This report cost about $5,000 a year to buy it when I was buying it. And then I get it for free. It's probably more like 10 grand right now. And so it's around the state or the nature of the consulting industry. And it's going to talk about the 6 practice areas and what are the domains. In other words, if we say one of them is strategy and organizational development, helping businesses come up with their business strategy, their business models, etc. What are all the domains that go in there? You're not going to see this information anywhere from anybody else. Certainly, nobody's going to be giving it to you for free. That's what we're going to cover next week. Now, the last thing I want to say to you is absolutely get involved with us either in Facebook or LinkedIn. Since we're working in Facebook, I'm going to put a little bit more emphasis there. Our Facebook group, really simple, IBGR Network. Go there, get in the group. Our business page, IBGR Network. Get there, start tracking what we're doing. We're going to be doing in this series, every one of these are going to be live. So you're going to be able to see a live presentation, or you're going to be able to see a recording of it. Join our group, because if you go from there into our group, then what's going to happen is, and I think our group is Build Your Business Today. If you do that, then a lot of the things I talk about here that I'm not giving away to people, I'm giving away. It's not a come on. It simply is, if I don't know you, I ain't giving you anything. We get a relationship going. We get a conversation. It's just like with a client. I can't give you the wrong thing. You may be at fault, but I really am. Same thing with LinkedIn. IBGR Network is our LinkedIn business page. Join our group there. And I think that's just IBGR community. Join that one. Same thing. And then finally, that mobile app. The mobile app is important to you because you can have access to all of this. The relationship is never over. So you can either click the mobile app on the page, or you can go to ibgr.app. And we have one for both Apple as well as Android. So with that, don't go anywhere. We got a great lineup. I think we have Crystal Davis, Y Davis, coming up next, talking about lean in our operations track. This is William Eastman. This is show CIB 02, and thanks for listening. All right, that's it for me today. What I got to do now is I've got a show coming up that I have to pay attention to, and that's Crystal Y. Davis, and she's talking about leading with lean manufacturing. So I've got to get off. So I greatly appreciate you, everybody listening. If you want to get a hold of me, programming at ibgr.network. That's programming with 2 M's at ibgr.network. And expect an answer within 24 hours. If not, immediately. All right, here we go. Take care.